This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. We are going to get going in just a second with Howard Poole, brand new co-host and new patron and brand new wrestling fan. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because not only is he all of those things, but he also attended Raw 30 in person in Philly. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. But of course, guys, if you want to get on board with us for Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season, head on over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast and get yourself an ad-free experience, or on Apple Podcasts. Click the ad-free button and go ad-free so you don't have to go and skip through the ads or have to endure a non-streamlined listening experience. So that being said, I do have one announcement to make, and I'll let Mr. and Mrs. Casual Wrestling Fan do that for me. And immediately following this, we will begin the conversation with Howard Poole. So don't go anywhere.
Good morning, WWE Podcast listeners. My name is Mr. Casual Wrestling Fan.
And this is Mrs. Casual Wrestling Fan.
And we want to let you know about a new show that we're bringing to the WWE Podcast called
Good Morning WWE.
On Good Morning WWE, we'll bring you
wrestling news, rumors, and special guest interviews.
Our first episode will drop January the 30th, and we're going to give you a sneak peek live right here on the WWE Podcast. Top news stories. Top news today, The Rock will not be at WrestleMania 39. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that The Rock feels like he will not be in shape in time for the greatest show of shows this year.
Ooh.
So no Rock?
No Rock. In other news, Ronda Rousey, according to Fightful News, reports she's going to be a no-show for Royal Rumble.
I know everybody's happy about that. Top rumors for today. Goldberg will be in this year's Royal Rumble.
Goldberg.
We hope you enjoyed the sneak peek, and we hope you'll tune in to Good Morning WWE starting Monday, January 30th. And as we always say, you the twos and we the ones.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Monday Night Raw review, a very special Monday Night Raw review, as not only is it the WrestleMania, or rather Raw 30 review show, but we have someone that was live in person. He's also a patron of the show. He also attended his very first live show for wrestling, a new fan to wrestling. So lots of awesome stuff. We have got an in-person perspective from essentially a new fan, and I'll introduce him right now. Howard Poole, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. For the folks at home, if my voice sounds a little scratchy here and there, my apologies. Of course, was out there last night for the show. Maybe got a little too wild, got a little too loud. So voice is recovering a little bit, but doing fantastic tonight, and very happy to be here.
Oh, this I'm really excited about this. I've been excited about it for a while. Someone that attended live in person is always fun to talk to, but more importantly, and even more fun, is that the fact that you're a brand new fan. So before we get into Raw 30, and there's a lot to discuss, what brought you into wrestling? How did you get into wrestling, and how long have you been watching?
So, good friend of mine, he actually went to Raw 30 with me. He's been watching for about 20 years or so, but mostly his entire life that he's been watching. I, on the other hand, have been watching for about 6 months or so, picked it up at Clash of the Castle, but he's a very passionate fan, has been dedicated his whole life. So he really brought me into it. And so, I'm a fresher fan, but, probably about 4.5 months back, the bug really kind of took hold. And man, I haven't missed an episode probably in these last 4 months between Raw and SmackDown. It's been a great experience. And actually the reason we went to Raw 30th to begin with was a Christmas gift, not only for him, but a little selfishly myself, but a Christmas gift for him and I to both go to our first live show ever. And so, yeah, it was a great first experience. But, yeah, so, about 6 months or so I've been watching. But, man, it kind of took hold. And, I'd like to say I'm as passionate with the rest of them coming into it. But, yeah, I'm kind of fresh perspective, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's so refreshing because you don't have all of this background knowledge, which I think is an asset in some regard because you don't have anything to compare these storylines to, and it's always fun to see what would somebody who's a new fan think about what's going on right now, and that's what we're going to get into. So before we do, one last question is, what right now as a newer fan, what is something that you're really digging right now?
Man, I got to tell you, I tell you, to me, what I guess I've fallen in love with, Sami Zayn and his promo work, and just the way that he can really bring emotion into what he's doing. It just feels very real. It feels very, we'll get into the kind of the tribal court and things like that, but I mean, just the way that he, you're starting to feel this kind of where he's feeling betrayed and so that to me has been very gripping. It's been it feels realistic. It's to me one of the most realistic things on there. It's the complete opposite of what they're calling the hard dom and being in prison. But to me that has been one of the most gripping things to me is we know it's going to end at some point with Sami and the bloodline and, with him being honorary Uce. And it's still, to me, it's must watch TV. To me, it's gripping. When we were there at Raw 30, I was just staring, just watching them, kind of it all go down. So for sure, that to me has been it's been a huge draw.
No doubt about it. Even for myself, I've been watching since '97, and I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying that to also just kind of compare how we're viewing this storyline. And I think doesn't matter if you've been watching it 6 months or for 20, 30, 40, even longer years. This is the best storyline WWE has produced in a very long time. This is captivating. It is, as you said, it is kind of must-watch TV, and I'm loving almost everything that they're doing with this. And we'll get into the tribal court in just 1 second, but I have to ask about Hulk Hogan, okay? Because I know he opened the show before there was a video package, and I've heard reports that Hulk Hogan got booed in the arena, and on TV, or at least on the Hulu version, maybe they edited it, I'm not sure. It sounded like he got a pretty strong positive reaction, so either they manipulated the sound in post-production, or he genuinely got cheered for the most part. Were there a lot of boos, or are those reports false?
Nah, I didn't hear really anyone booing him. I mean, I think people were of course it was the open of the show, so everyone was already just kind of going nuts. It was a sold out crowd. So, I mean, everyone was going nuts in there. So when he came out, I didn't really hear any boos. And I mean, you kind of saw from the video package, everyone's high-fiving him. So, yeah, I really didn't hear any boos unless they're right there at the ramp. A couple people were booing him, but back where we were sitting and kind of up in the stands, from what I heard, it was cheers. Everyone was happy to see him.
Okay, all right. So maybe I'm not sure what the reports were that were coming out. So that's good to hear. You validated that. There were probably a few people, but in general, it was what it was. That he got a positive reaction. So that's interesting. And so Raw then, of course, got that video package. Always well done by the WWE production team. And then the Bloodline comes out, and we got Sami Zayn on tribal court. Paul Heyman got a lot of ECW chants because of the history of the ECW in Philly, but quickly had the crowd turn on him. And I have to give it to Paul Heyman, who has done such a great job over the last several weeks of re-injecting himself verbally into the storyline. He was kind of a bystander for a while, and they weren't utilizing him, I think, to the full capacity. Paul Heyman, when he's on his game on the mic, there's nothing better. And Paul Heyman playing the prosecution for the Bloodline against Sami Zayn was nothing short of brilliant. The crowd turned on Heyman quickly, and he provided some pretty solid evidence of Sami Zayn potentially actually trying to undermine the Bloodline. And before we continue, I'll stop there. What was the reaction like for Sami initially and for Paul Heyman initially?
I mean, from the get-go, of course, as soon as everyone sees Sami, the Sami, the honorary chants start going. And of course, like, it is, you love to despise and hate Paul Heyman. Like, I mean, he's so good at what he does. And so for him there, as he's kind of giving his defense and he's, accusing Sami of going against the bloodline, like, he's so well spoken, and it's like, he gets under your skin, but he does it in a way that you're like, I want to keep seeing this go. But like, Sami was getting the chance. Sami, crowd favorite for sure. But Paul Heyman did a great job of kind of doing the setup work for it, and kind of being the counterbalance to that.
That's good to hear that, he, even in person, I haven't seen him in person in quite a while, still is able to manipulate a crowd the way he is. He's still a genius on the microphone. The dude doesn't age. He's an absolute genius, and I think he did a great job playing prosecution, as you said. And again, he provided, I think, 4 pieces of evidence, and then we had Roman Reigns about to find Sami Zayn guilty and about to sick Solo Sikoa on Sami and give him the Samoan spike and probably a beatdown, and then Jey Uso steps in to the defense of Sami and provides 6 or 7 pieces of footage that end up saving Sami Zayn from total destruction. And at that point, before we go further with the not guilty verdict, I don't know if you saw it, I'm sure you did, but there was actual emotion on Sami Zayn's face that, after that footage was played, it looked like he was almost in tears. And it was just so well done by Sami Zayn from an emotional standpoint. Like, you were watching and feeling him every step of the way. And did you see that with Sami Zayn? He almost was in tears.
Yeah, man. Again, like, props to Sami for being able to portray that emotion. Good on Jay, though, too. And even if you kind of look, I don't know how the camera kind of focuses, but we could see Jimmy really well, too. And both of those guys kind of showing the emotion of supporting Sami. Jay, I thought, did phenomenal with that piece as well. Yeah, man, it's interesting kind of moving forward. Sami, showed that kind of raw emotion, and it's like, you start to wonder if it's like, man, is this going to be more than just Sami leaving the bloodline, or is there going to be a real crack that forms here where there starts to get some inner confrontation between the entire group?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what happened here that leads me into the next part of this, as we know, Reigns declared Zayn not guilty, and the key words were "for now." And he seemed still upset, but kind of having his hand forced, given the evidence that overwhelmed the defense, that Sami deserves, one more kick at the can, so to speak, and finds him not guilty, but says that he doesn't want to see him until Saturday, and the Royal Rumble will be his final test. Whatever that means, we don't know yet. So something at the Royal Rumble will happen where he's going to be tested. Now, I think that many expected, including myself, up until a few days before Raw 30, The Rock to show up. Did anyone in the audience mention it? Did you hear any kind of Rock chants or any kind of chatter that The Rock may show up?
Well, so definitely kind of at the beginning, but one thing that became very clear as we were getting ready for the show was that the recognition, like the recognition ceremony from the generations had turned into tribal court. And so when we kind of heard that, it was almost, and I was talking, like I said, I was talking with my buddy and I was like, man, it's almost like so many people had jumped on the bandwagon of, oh man, this means The Rock is going to be here. Do you wonder if WWE switched it to tribal court to be like, no, guys, like, The Rock is not coming. Like, we're switching this because y'all are chanting for The Rock too much. It felt really weird that switch happened such last minute.
Yeah, I did, and I think in the reports that I've read from websites that are credible is that it was that they were notified that The Rock told them he can't do WrestleMania with Roman Reigns this year, and that's the reason for the switch. However, there's still a chance that that was just to kind of do a swerve of fans who kind of felt that that was a perfect setup for The Rock to return on Monday when it was originally all generations of the bloodline, and that was a perfect platform for The Rock to return, of course. And then when they switched it, the reports started coming out that The Rock was not going to be at WrestleMania, and so it still could be a swerve where WWE did that on purpose to kind of get us off the trail, and he still shows up at the Rumble. We don't know, but I think that The Rock is probably not going to be there. I think he is out, unfortunately, but I'm sure that you've heard the reports of Stone Cold Steve Austin, or maybe you haven't, that he has been apparently given a large sum of money offer from WWE to face Roman Reigns at this year's WrestleMania. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I saw that literally like 2 hours ago, and was looking at that a little bit. And yeah, I mean, so right, it seems very, and of course, one thing I didn't even think about is last night, back at the hotel, I had seen a commercial for XFL, and of course, The Rock is a partial owner of the XFL now, which XFL season will be starting right around WrestleMania time. And so it all kind of adds up to, right, The Rock's got some prior engagements kind of going on. So the idea of The Rock dropping out to me seems very realistic from that kind of standpoint. But I don't hate the idea of Stone Cold coming back. Of course, I don't think anyone does. It's just the only way to. It's hard to see how they incorporate him into that storyline, but Triple H has been doing pretty solid. So, and of course, no one would mind him coming back.
I don't think so either, and I obviously I'm not in contact with Austin. I have no idea what he's thinking, and the money does matter, I'm sure, but at the same time, I'm sure he's also concerned about his legacy and the standard he holds himself to of not embarrassing himself in the ring and making sure he can be as much as he could be at this age. And perform at the level that he wants to and expects of himself. And I also think that him not being, the Austin that is, not being at Raw 30 actually tips the scales in favor of Austin coming back for a match at Mania. Because if you're going to have Austin there at Raw 30 and just dish out a couple of stunners and do the greatest hits, but it's not leading to a match, that would be one thing. But for him to be purposefully off Raw, where he was the face of Raw for like the better part of 5 to 10 years, it's telling to me that they're saving Austin for a bigger purpose. That to me is the way I'm taking this based on WWE's booking, that they didn't have Austin's return to WWE be quote unquote wasted at a Raw 30 when they make it a bigger deal when he returns to potentially face Roman Reigns. So I think my point is just, and maybe you'd agree, disagree, that Austin not being at Raw 30 is actually a good thing, a good sign if you're looking for him to have a match at WrestleMania.
No, and that was the general kind of rumblings in Wells Fargo Center was they had sold. There was probably like 5 different pieces of merchandise that were Stone Cold related. And we're all like, you're selling all this Stone Cold. He's the face of Raw. He's not here tonight, which means it's understandable. Like they don't control his schedule, but it's like, if you're not having him back for Raw 30 this year, you best be planning something big with him. Mm-hmm. And so I think I think you're kind of on the right path. And that was kind of like how everyone was kind of talking there in the stadium. It was, if he's not here tonight, you're selling the merch and that kind of deal. You're building him for something bigger, and which is exciting to see. And hopefully it goes through that way.
I hope so. And, I could talk about this forever. I think I've never been this excited for a Royal Rumble. I know this is, if you've only been watching for 6 months, this is your first Royal Rumble. I've never been more excited about a Rumble than this year based on all the possibilities. We'll finally get some answers about what's going to happen. And just a quick question before we continue with Raw, with the Usos and the Judgment Day, which will be our next topic, is do you have a Royal Rumble pick? Do you think you have an idea of who's going to win the men's Royal Rumble?
Oh, man, that was like half our ride home. That was the conversation. And, like, clearly, because of course we'll talk about them doing another promo for Cody Rhodes, but it's like, good. I mean, like, man, come on. Like, if you're going to do that many promos for him, it feels kind of like writing on the wall. But of course, like, and you guys have covered too, we're both, it'd be great to see Rollins, get the win. I think Rollins and Rhodes are going to be two of the final four, I would think. Man, yeah, it is hard to pinpoint it, but I would probably say, if I had to, Rhodes. Mm-hmm. But I like I said, I'm hoping maybe Rollins kind of steals it out from under him. And of course, we of course did the count last night. There's still 14 people that have not been announced for it yet. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to say who shows up in those 14. Like, right, if Sami ends up being one of them, of course Sami shoots to the top of the list of one of the guys who could potentially steal it away. So, like I said, I'd go with Cody, but it's hard to say.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the thing is, people have, since he got injured at the Hell in a Cell event and faced Seth Rollins and he went away for 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it's been, he's been the favorite to win the Rumble ever since that injury, because we did the math and we're like, oh, he'll return by the Rumble and then he'll win the Rumble and face Roman. And so far, so good. That's exactly what people have been expecting. But it's almost so obvious that they can't do that. Like, that's the thing that I'm looking at. It's just like, yes, I think he still is the favorite, but are they really going to go with the most obvious choice? I'm not saying it's the wrong choice, but, this has been so obvious for so long, and they are now promoting the hell out of him on every show that they can, that it's just I'm looking at this going, but can they do this really? Like, they're still going to go with this choice, even though it is so obvious to do. And of course, we'll get our answer on Saturday. But all right, let's move on for a little bit on Monday Night Raw. The Usos take on the Judgment Day for just the Raw Tag Team titles here. And I really, really enjoyed this match personally. I thought that it was very well done. A lot of drama back and forth. There were even moments when I thought that the Judgment Day could win the match. There were some very nice false finishes in this matchup, but the Usos end up getting the victory after Sami Zayn takes the place of Jimmy, I think it was, in the matchup. And as Jimmy was quote unquote injured, they end up winning the match. And, of course, retaining the titles. What did you think about this in person?
Oh, man, they did a phenomenal job. There's a reason the Judgment Day, they're so high up kind of on the list now. And so, they did great all around. I got to tell you, I was very happy to see that, Finn getting kicked out of the match. I thought was great, because it's finally ref takes notice, ref enforces the rule. Like, if they could get more consistent on that, fantastic. But I liked that it evened up the match more. Of course, you still had, Rhea Ripley there, but still, they just all around the match went really well. And I mean, even as the match was starting, split kind of in there from people we were talking to, of who was going to win it, especially with them kind of saying it was for the Raw title. It was very split of, does the Judgment Day take it today? And so that kept the hype up the whole way through that match. I mean, people were going nuts in there. Philly, of course, did a great job with the fans there. But, it was a great match overall, I thought. I thought they did a fantastic job.
It really was it was a pay-per-view quality match, I thought. I thought it could have been on a pay-per-view, and I think most people would have said that was a really good match. And you put it on a Monday Night Raw, and I think the standard is even higher. And, this was an absolute, it was a great way to start the show. Essentially, the first hour of Raw, like the first total hour of Raw, was devoted to Sami Zayn. I mean, like, in one way or another, the 1/3 of the show was dedicated to Sami Zayn, and I have no problem with that. I think that whole story took a massive step forward to the eventual, I think, to me, is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back with Sami and Roman at Royal Rumble. In one way or another, I think Sami Zayn is going to fail whatever test he has for Sami. Personally, what do I think that test is? It's probably going to be after Roman beats Kevin, he's going to set up Kevin for like a concerto or something, and Sami Zayn hesitates to, basically kill his friend, and that's where Roman Reigns realizes that, Sami Zayn is not loyal to the bloodline. That's my personal opinion. But, so any other comments on this match before we move forward?
No, like I said, I think, very well done. Great way to open the show. And it really kind of kept the energy moving forward into the next few segments. So, no, it was fantastic.
All right, very good. So let's continue with the next match here that really didn't happen. Bayley versus Becky Lynch, and that didn't happen. Now I'll talk about LA Knight and Undertaker in a minute, but the Bayley and Lynch inside a steel cage didn't happen, and it was just Damage Control who beat down Becky Lynch and left her laying. And I have to say, this was really surprising to me that they advertised the match and didn't deliver on a big match. I know that they're trying to get heat on the heels here, and I understand that, but it's very rare that WWE advertises a match and doesn't deliver. Usually if that happens, they over-deliver and do something different that's even better. In this case, they didn't give you a steel cage match at all. They just had Becky Lynch get beat down, and that was it. At home, I was a little frustrated with this. In the crowd, in listening to you guys there, how did you guys feel in person about this not happening?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think a lot of people almost felt cheated in the crowd. Because, again, when you're talking a cage match, like, people get stoked for it. And, I think everyone was like, oh, man, this is what this is needing, right? Like, getting Becky and Bayley in that cage, like, letting them kind of go at it. This is what this storyline needs, maybe to just get a little bit of pop, some freshness. And, again, this story has been flat, and just another underwhelming flat. And it's like, man, you had the potential and the chance to make this pop and to do something really cool with this. And again, it just kind of fell flat. As we were walking out, like, that's like the biggest thing I think that, like, I heard as people were being like, man, that cage match, like and like everyone in air quotes being like match, like it just a disappointment. So yeah, I think, it was for kind of following, that first hour or so of the show, it was like, man, what a disappointment that kind of became. And so, yeah, it's just, if they're going to keep this storyline, they got to find a way to make something in their pop, because it's just not working the way it's going.
It's almost like, as you mentioned, like, it's almost as if they purposely tried to make this even worse. I mean, a storyline that, again, I love Bayley, I love Becky. They are legends in their own right at this point. I mean, they could be in the Hall of Fame right now if their careers ended. That's how good both of them are and have been, and their history has been. But for some reason, this version of their feud has not clicked at all. It feels just very cold, just isn't working. I'm ready for both women to move on, and that's all. I don't have any ill will towards either. I don't think it's a bad storyline. It's just not clicking, and that happens. But they had a chance, as you said, to actually make this interesting and have an awesome match and maybe get people a little bit emotionally invested. Instead, they did the worst thing possible, not only making a cold feud even colder, but trying to put heat on the heels that I think was the people were booing, not at Dakota Kai and Io Sky, but just the fact that you knew you weren't going to get a match. I think that's to me, how I interpreted it at home, that you guys were booing because, not that, oh, well, we hate the heels, boo. No, it was more of just like, this is BS. I was waiting for the bull, what chance to come out. I thought that was going to happen. But that's the one thing, that to me is even the worst thing about it is really undermining the goodwill of fans, where you advertise a match, and they advertised it really up until this match was supposed to happen. It's not like they cut it out before Raw. They advertised it all week, and then they don't deliver. It's very rare, and it's not good to do with fans. It's not something you want to do, to advertise a match, especially on Raw 30. I mean, it's a big stage. So, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I was disappointed in this to at least get something going, and now they made me even less interested.
Well, and I'll tell you kind of two things that we kind of took from this is, like, as Becky's kind of getting the beat down, we're like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity for, and I know kind of, women's tag team is used loosely, but it's like, this is the perfect time for another one or two women to come out here and back up Becky. And it's like, potentially turn this into a 3-on-3 kind of deal. But it's like, this is the perfect time to maybe introduce something else, get a little bit of pop from bringing in it 2 more to help with damage control. The other thing is the BS chant did happen, so I'm guessing they cut it on TV, but it for sure happened. Now, like we were pretty quick on that. So
okay, then they must have edited it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was waiting, especially in Philly. I mean, that's a crowd that doesn't hold back. And so, okay. I meant to ask too about the crowd. Was it a lot of families? Was it kind of a mix of like men, women, families, or was it predominantly like an older male audience?
No, I was very surprised. A very good mix. Like, I mean, there was quite a few groups of women there, like all together. Like, there was a couple ladies sitting behind us that the 4 of them came, I guess, kind of as just like a girls' trip. And so, no, I mean, it was great to see all different ages, a lot of families, a lot of kids that got brought to it. But yeah, it was a very good mix to see a lot of different people there.
That's great. I really like to hear that it's not just the stereotypical, 18 to 40-year-old male that's there. While we are the foundational piece of the audience, it's cool to hear, no, really, that like the women are being drawn to the product and they're actually spending money and their time to go to these events. And also that it was sold out. So that's cool to hear. So, all right. So then we got, before this though, LA Knight came out. He talked about his match with Bray Wyatt, and he was interrupted by the Undertaker's gong. It went dark, but then he turned into the American Badass. Now, you've only been a fan for 6 months, so were you aware? I'm sure even if you weren't a wrestling fan, you were aware of who the Undertaker is. But did you know about the American Badass that he was for a short time during the early 2000s?
So one thing that my buddy, and I'm sure he's fine with me, Cody, that has introduced me. So of course I am very much caught up on the current happenings. He has been doing his best for us to go back and watch some of the older stuff to kind of get me up to speed on some things. So yes, was familiar with the American Badass, was familiar with the Harley, and so I mean when we heard the Harley, we're like, yes. Like, it's American Badass, and so he comes out on the Harley. But one thing I wanted to touch on, and so we had talked a bit about, man, wouldn't it be awesome if LA Knight shows up? Because LA Knight, I think, for current roster, is really risen to the top for both of us as one of our favorites. Does phenomenal
Agreed.
Promo work.
Yeah,
we're excited to see him really in the ring in a full match, especially with Bray, because Bray's a solid wrestler. He's got solid technique, so I'm excited to see the two of them hopefully really get into a wrestle match. But so we keep talking about LA Knight being there, and there's one guy in front of us, and he's like, man, I don't think LA Knight would show up to this. He's SmackDown. And I was just like, nah, man, there's a chance that LA Knight is here. I was like, I just got to believe that when getting ready for the Rumble that they do something here. And so when they're transitioning from the previous match to having LA Knight out there, the ring goes dark for the live event. And so we're looking at the screen and at the ramp, seeing who's coming out. And I just happened to turn my head towards the ring, and there's LA Knight already out there. And I looked at my buddy, and I said, dude, LA Knight is here. And I mean, just phenomenal promo work, and so excited that he was there. But for him and Undertaker to be in the ring together, dude, just phenomenal. I mean, really was very much one of the highlights of the night was him being there, but also Undertaker being in there with him.
Yeah, this was well constructed. I'm with you on the LA Knight thing. I hope he doesn't. I do like Bray Wyatt, but I think LA Knight needs the victory more than Bray Wyatt at the Rumble. I really do hope that LA Knight somehow squeaks out the victory at the Rumble. And because I think he needs it, and he's doing awesome work right now. I am totally with you on the promos. His presence, he doesn't feel intimidated by anybody. I love how his character, even though he's a heel, isn't buying into the whole scary, spooky part of Bray Wyatt. He's calling him out on that. He stood up to the Undertaker. Like, I love that part of it, where normal heels would kind of cower and like kind of shake and pretend that they're scared. LA Knight has a sense of confidence and a presence that is so much different than most heels. LA Knight, I think, is going to be a major star in the next 6 to 12 months in WWE once we get past Mania and maybe in towards SummerSlam and next year's WrestleMania. I love LA Knight's work. I'm a huge fan of it. His promos, I want to hear him and hear what he has to say every single week. I want to hear him on the mic. He's so fun to listen to. Again, the confidence, the delivery, everything. And The Undertaker didn't get the choke slam, which I was kind of sad. I love LA Knight, but like, you know, my sense for nostalgia was overwhelming, and I'm like, it's going to be cool to see a choke slam or a tombstone. And we didn't get it, which I was surprised. I mean, Undertaker doesn't have to take a bump. All he has to do is, you know, choke slam someone, which is, you know, as minimal as it gets. But it was given to Bray Wyatt, who gave him Sister Abigail, and he left him laying. And then, of course, Bray Wyatt and Undertaker had kind of a stare down. How was that feeling to see Bray Wyatt and Undertaker have kind of a moment as well?
Yeah, I think it was a nice, kind of how I've been seeing people pose it, is like a passing of the torch kind of deal. And you know, I like to kind of see that. I mean, listen, and we're kind of backtracking to a certain degree. Like with them bringing back Firefly Funhouse, again, that's something that my buddy had tried to get me kind of, you know, caught up on. And so, yeah, seeing Bray Wyatt kind of take over the mystical element of WWE and kind of the passing of the torch, I thought it was nice. I thought that whole section, like you said, was well done. Well put together, and yeah, I mean, of course, just nice. It was cool to see him out there on the Harley. Like, I mean, just even for someone who wasn't a fan back then, but like everywhere you turned, Undertaker was there. Like, I mean, I remember kids in school having Undertaker shirts on, and I didn't get it at the time, but it still almost felt nostalgic for me to see someone who's still prevalent in the main media to be there that night. So yeah, I just all around well done.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, moving on, we got the Street Profits and Seth Rollins versus Imperium, but before we got to that match, it's kind of a contrived, roundabout, long segment to get there, but it was still fun, right? Like, and again, these are major names that even if you didn't watch wrestling or hated wrestling or thought it was fake or stupid, you can't avoid the fact if you were alive in the late 90s and a teenager in the late 90s or whatever, that you didn't hear the name Stone Cold Steve Austin, you didn't know who or what DX was or The Undertaker was. Like, these are all like essentially household names. So when you take that into consideration, DX coming out gets, you know, everybody up and excited and doing the DX chop and everything else like that. So they came out with Kurt Angle and Imperium. I guess, well, not I guess, they did come out pretty quickly, and then Gunther and the rest of the team told DX that you guys are an embarrassment to this sport and you don't respect this sport. You're making a mockery of it. And nobody wanted to step to Gunther, and they all were like, "Oh, I'm not doing it." And then one of them would pretend to, and then they'd say, "Oh, wait, I'm retired. I'm not doing it." It was funny. I mean, there was some kind of comedic segments that worked. Some did, some didn't. It was fine, I think. And then eventually it led to the 6-man tag with Teddy Long, and Teddy Long, famously known for making tag team matches, came out and did exactly what he does best. And of course, Rollins and the Street Profits were the ones to step up and get the victory over Imperium. So what did you think about this whole segment with Kurt Angle and D-Generation X with Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Road Dogg, X-Pac, and all the rest?
I thought it was a really good way to get quite a few of the legends out there at once. Because they had announced about Triple H and Shawn Michaels both being there. So everyone was kind of like, oh man, it sounds like DX is going to be there, that they're going to all kind of show up. And so, for all the guys to be there, everyone at first was kind of like, why is Kurt Angle out with DX? But of course they explained it a little bit and kind of threw jokes, that kind of deal. One of the other things that was kind of big in that match is, man, Montez Ford, and I know you've covered it too. Montez Ford looks like he's just going to keep kind of building, and he has a bright future in WWE. I mean, he's the Street Profits overall looks great, but man, Montez Ford looks good. He just continues to kind of show up, and I'm excited to see where he goes. But yeah, it was the segment wise. There's a couple funnies in there, but I thought it was a good way to get quite a few legends in the ring. We got a match out of it. Wasn't the world's most exciting match, but there's some physicality to it, which is nice. Gunter always brings some physicality, so we got some physicality with it. But like I said too, Montez Ford looked great in there.
He is the star every time he's in the ring. He is, and I can't wait for him to eventually break out. As I've said, you've heard it, and I think a lot of people agree that he is no doubt the star of that group, and eventually, I think, a future WWE champion. I really believe that in the next year, 2 years at the most, he is destined for something beyond the Street Profits team, and I'm rooting for him. So, but this segment was just a nostalgic throwback. And that's all this was built for, and that's fine. It's Raw 30. You're going to have a segment like this. It did bring out about 75% of the legends that were advertised. As you said, they kind of shoved them all into one segment so that they could deliver as advertised. And I think it generally worked. Again, I wasn't knee-slappingly funny. Some of the inside jokes were a little kind of oosh. Like Triple H saying that, this booking thing isn't easy. Kind of doing some stuff that breaks the fourth wall, knowing that he actually books the matches. It depends on how you view it, but that kind of stuff, it can be funny, but you got to be very careful that it doesn't completely make the whole show look like a sham when you are talking about booking matches on a show that books matches. It gets kind of weird, but overall, it was meant to be a nostalgic kind of fun throwaway match that makes people feel good about about WWE, and I think generally they achieve that with the chop and the let's get ready to suck it and the all that kind of stuff, which is fine. So anything else on this segment before we move on?
The one last thing is you said about Teddy Long, and Teddy got the biggest pop of that entire segment. When Teddy came out, everyone just started going nuts. And so, it was cool to see, too, because, I'd seen a little bit of Teddy's old stuff, and so for him to come out, though, I mean, everyone started going nuts for Teddy, and so that was cool to see. But, yeah, that was what made me chuckle the most was Teddy, who didn't even go the whole way to the ring and all. Teddy was the one that everyone went nuts for.
That's so funny. Yeah, he's just so likable, and I'm sure that, you haven't watched that version of when Teddy Long was the SmackDown general manager in the mid 2000s. Again, the tag team match thing is I don't know where it started from, but it feels like every single match Teddy Long made when he was general manager of SmackDown a decade and a half ago, that it was just a tag team match, and it just continues. And bringing him out, I totally am on board for that reaction for Teddy. He's deserving of it. It's just kind of a feel good moment. Teddy Long is entertaining. He could still play GM if he wanted to. So. Yeah, that's cool to hear. All right, then we get Bianca Belair versus Sonya Deville. When Charlotte came out, she was introduced by Rick. I'm sure Charlotte is tired of being tied to her father, but it's a nostalgic show. And this ended with Bianca Belair getting the victory. Charlotte. Well, it was Charlotte versus Sonya Deville, and the match ended up with It says Bianca Belair won the match. This wasn't on Hulu. What went on in this match?
So Rick introduces Charlotte. We were all kind of wondering what Rick was going to do there. Kind of disappointed that Rick was just out there for a minute or two just for an intro for Charlotte. But so Charlotte comes out to the ring and talks about, being the queen of WWE and saying that she is, she's the number one. And that's when Bianca comes out and says, you might be the number one of SmackDown, but Raw is my show and I am the Raw champion. And I deserve that number one status. And they kind of have a camaraderie thing. And so that's when, so Charlotte and her are talking, and that's when Sonya Deville comes out and starts talking. Man, that's one thing that sometimes a storyline, change it up a little bit. Sonya comes out again talking about how she's deserving and she's the best and that kind of deal. But what it leads to is Charlotte saying, Bianca, this is your show. Why don't you put Sonya in her place? And so that's it's a Bianca-Sonya match. And so the match wasn't the most memorable. Bianca looked like the athlete she is. So, I even went back and watched that match through some of the clips. And I mean, Bianca was Bianca. She is an athlete through and through. I feel like there's a couple guys on the roster that she could maybe beat the crap out of. But so yeah, it was a short match. Bianca Bianca took care of business pretty quickly. But yeah, man, I like Sonya Deville as a heel. I just the Charlotte Flair thing to me is running out a little bit. It's time to give Sonya, some competition to maybe get a new storyline going. Because every week of her coming out and being I'm the best, give me the belt. It's gonna run out quick, I think, for people. I think they're gonna get tired of it here pretty quick.
And the problem is also she keeps losing. I mean, she keeps losing and then screaming she's the best, and then losing and screaming she's the best.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you cleared that up for me, because I'm reading the description of the one thing that wasn't on Hulu, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But the way you described it makes total sense. So it feels kind of like, I hate to say a throwaway, but just kind of, giving some exposure to Charlotte, continuing the storyline with Sonya and Charlotte, but also giving Bianca Belair a victory. So, yeah, good. I mean, it kind of seems like it was what it was. And, I don't have much more to say about it. Were people doing, I'm guessing, the woo, and when Rick came out, I'm sure, woo everywhere?
They wooed. Even Charlotte did a woo. And of course, then we all wooed back, and so everyone was wooing literally the entire time. And of course, with Ric Flair's new documentary coming out, I think people the love for Ric Flair now has just kind of been reborn amongst WWE Universe, and so I think. Yeah, as soon as we walked in there, people were wooing. But I think the match, the main purpose it was serving was to continue to build Charlotte, as a babyface, because Charlotte and Bianca are kind of getting along, and Charlotte's trying to put Sonya in her place. And so I think that's really if they didn't even show it on Hulu kind of was just it's not worth it. But so I think really that was the kind of main push that they were doing there. It was a way to show off Rick and a way to push Sonya, or a way to push Charlotte as a babyface again.
Were people mostly cheering for Charlotte? I mean, most of her career has been a heel, and I think naturally she's better as a heel. But were most people on board for cheering Charlotte here?
I think so, and I guess that's to me that from what I'm seeing, the way that it has worked with her being a babyface is it feels like it's this almost out of respect for her career thing, where it's that's why if it is working for her as a babyface, it's just because it's Charlotte has accomplished a lot in her career. Of course, I like that you and I think it was Anthony DeMarco were bringing up that it's what does Charlotte look like without a championship? That's the last thing she has to prove yet. But I think just the babyface thing has worked out of respect for her career. And so, right, when she came out, generally the crowd was cheering. I didn't really hear too many boos towards her. And I think, again, it feels like it's more out of respect than out of like, oh man, we love Charlotte and we love her as a baby face. It's more of a, man, we love Charlotte, like we respect what she's done, like let's hear her kind of out. And of course, she got rid of Ronda Rousey, which like I think everyone should just be like so thankful for. So I mean, like that alone makes her just like the best baby face right now, is that she got rid of Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. No one is chanting for Ronda. We want Ronda. There's none of that, and I think there's nothing. I haven't heard anybody. I honestly haven't even thought about her since she lost her belt and went back into her hole or whatever she's doing. I'm sure she'll show back up as part of the Women's Royal Rumble and have a moment with Becky, which I think will eventually lead to their match at WrestleMania. That's my pick, but I honestly have no interest in seeing Ronda Rousey again in a wrestling ring. I just don't. That's my personal opinion. But all right, then we get to here the main event, and this was a United States Championship match with Austin Theory versus Bobby Lashley, and I thought that this was a good match. I didn't think it blew the roof off the place, but I think this was a very solid match, as you would expect from two guys like Austin Theory and Lashley. And the weirdest part about this was Brock Lesnar, and you guys seemed to be genuinely surprised, but also excited. It seemed like the crowd reaction was pretty big for Brock Lesnar coming out and once again attacking Bobby Lashley. Well, I don't know what his beef is with Bobby Lashley. That's never been explained. I'm kind of over Lashley and Lesnar. I was hoping Lesnar would go on to something bigger and better at WrestleMania, but it seems like they're going to continue part 3 here. And he comes out and F5s Lashley, F5s Austin Theory onto Lashley, thus Austin Theory retaining the United States Championship. What'd you think?
Yeah, so I guess to kind of go to the promo where they were showing Lashley backstage with MVP, and Lashley made the comment, "I've put Brock Lesnar behind me." And everyone in the stadium kind of just went, huh? And so it was like, why are you bringing up, Brock if you're done with him? And so I think that's when, I think people were happy to see Brock Lesnar. You know, of course, Brock Lesnar he's amazing to see. Like, I tell you too, like for my first live event, and so we were down in the lower section. So, I mean, we had a great shot of the ring. These dudes are massive. And I am 6'4", and watching these dudes in the ring, I'm like, oh, dude, I look tiny compared to these guys. And so seeing Lesnar come out, and of course Bobby Lashley looks huge, but I think we all kind of were questioning if Lesnar was going to show up when Bobby made that comment. And then for Lesnar to come out, though, I think people were just stoked to see him. The match, again, man, I tell you, Austin Theory, I think, is building something for himself. I think one thing that you guys probably didn't see at home was his interaction with the crowd as the match was going on. Like, Austin Theory was just feeding the fire and the ego of the fans. And so I think from that perspective, as for heel work, it was phenomenal. I am looking forward to a true match with Austin Theory, though, to see him whoop up on someone, to see a physical match that isn't interrupted by someone else or something stopping them. I guess that's what I'm looking forward to. But as far as the match went, it was a good one. But yeah, Lesnar it was nice to see him. But right, like you said, it'll be interesting to see. I guess right, they're taking it for a phase 3. And of course, now we've got business with MVP 2 that, Lashley will be going through. So, I guess it'll be a big Lashley push going into WrestleMania then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does, I'm glad you brought that up. The United States Championship matches, I mean, I can't tell you, has any one of them finished clean? It feels like all of them have somebody interrupting, distracting, interfering. Very few championship matches with the U.S. belt have felt like they are, a clean finish. It's heel babyface, nobody interrupts, and Austin Theory, I think, is doing a nice job as champion. I don't expect him to lose anytime soon, and I don't think Bobby Lashley is going to win either. I think we have really locked in for quite a while with Lashley and Brock Lesnar probably going off on their final Part 3 tangent. And, I don't know. I was just, when Brock came out, it was the first time I'm like, oh, all right, Brock's here. Why do I not feel very inspired by this? Like, I just don't need to see Brock and Bobby again. There was never an explanation as to why they started feuding in the first place. And they're two big dudes, and I respect them, and they're big stars, but I'm like, oh, okay, well, cool, I guess. That's how I kind of felt. I wasn't off-put by it. I was just kind of like, huh. I felt underwhelmed, I guess is the best words for it. And overall, I thought it was a good show. I thought that it was, again, in person, of course, is a totally different experience. Watching at home, I liked the show. It was filled with nostalgia, as those shows are. The wrestling was at a minimum, but that's kind of what you get with those big, promoted Raw 30, Raw 25, Raw All-Star Night, whatever it may be. That's kind of what you come to expect. But overall, I thought it was a good show. Did you have any final thoughts or things that I missed?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I guess, right. So one thing I kind of noticed at the end, and it's something that as I've been watching more and more Raw, if it was a 2-hour show, like I think Raw would be a lot more action-packed. Of course, I think the 30th anniversary, like in a 2-hour format, would have been super full, would have been a phenomenal show. But being 3 hours and having to fill that extra time, I mean, I think it takes away from it some. And I mean, we're looking forward to, we are hoping that after WrestleMania that they do a draft. Like, to me, it feels desperately needed that a redraft happens, that they bring some talent over to Raw. And, I've got some guys in mind that I would like to see. We'll kind of see how things work out. But, yeah, I mean, again, for a first live experience, I think it was phenomenal to see some of the legends in person. I thought was fantastic. I don't have a lot of complaints. I think there's some parts that fell a little flat, but I thought it was a good weekend to not only for the 30th anniversary, but to kind of the setup Friday, and then of course for the Royal Rumble. So I thought it was a nice, good flow episode, at least for that.
Yeah, for a go-home show to the Rumble, I think it was a nice kind of build, a peak build, and of course we saw the Cody promo videos. We touched on that a little bit, and again, very much the favorite to win the Rumble, but I think they did a nice job, and I'm ready to just get to the Rumble so we can kind of reset and start to see what WrestleMania is going to look like. We're not going to get all the answers, certainly not all the answers, but we're going to get a good chunk of things coming out of the Rumble that we can go, oh, I see what they're doing here. This match looks like it's coming for the WrestleMania. This match looks like it's coming. I think we'll get, maybe 25, 30, 40% of what we're going to get at WrestleMania at least clued in at the Rumble. So I'm excited for it, and I'm really glad you were able to come on. One thing I meant to ask about the merchandise, what were people wearing? A lot of Bloodline stuff, I'm guessing?
Yeah, quite a few of the Bloodline stuff. So they had Philly 316 shirts that they were selling. Of course, a Stone Cold, merchandise, but there was a ton of those. And then, of course, quite a few of the Raw is 30, the Raw is Triple X, those shirts. And there was one shirt that said, Raw 30, I am here. And it had a picture of all the legends on there that were showing up for the night. And so, quite a few, like that was kind of, with it being a unique show, quite a few of those pieces as well. But like I said, that Philly 316 shirt, I saw a ton of those in the crowd. So always cool to see more Stone Cold stuff get sold.
And there could be a lot more coming, I hope. Right, like.
Man, I hope.
I know you've been here like 6 months, but I'm sure you knew who Stone Cold was even before starting to watch wrestling, right? Like, you've heard the name.
Oh yeah,
okay.
For sure, yeah. I mean, who's not familiar? Who who hasn't been at a kegger party and, done the double beers? Like, it's, so yeah, now I was hoping like there might be a surprise appearance, but I'm excited that if he wasn't there, that maybe there's some big things coming then down the road. So
yep, that's my hope as well. And I know it's for those that maybe thought he was going to appear at Raw 30, and there were no reports. I don't think there was any expectation. But for those that were like, oh, maybe, you have to realize the sacrifice of it not happening at Raw 30 is for the better if he's coming out for a match at WrestleMania. And so yeah, but Howard, this has been so much fun. I'm really excited and really glad you're able to come on and give us an in-person perspective and give us things that we otherwise would not know. And let everyone know, if you want to, of course, where they can not only find you on social media, if you want to share that, but also on camera that you let me know about before we hit the record button.
So Facebook, Howard Poole, and you can find me. I'm working on getting on in the Discord. I post on Patreon page every once in a while, but the Discord is one thing I got to get more on. Instagram, Howie_plumcrazy, and that's my catering company. But yeah, if you look on Raw 30, we were in the lower section facing the camera. So if you see to the right side, a large dude in a purple sweatshirt, because I was trying to show off our catering sweatshirt. If you look there, though, you'll see a large man, and that's me. And a couple times you'll see me just looking up to see if I'm on screen. But then there's also some times where I'm just yelling very aggressively, and scratchy voice. So
that's what you should do at wrestling events. So that's totally understandable. So Howard, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and enjoy Royal Rumble, enjoy WrestleMania. I'm sure that we'll be in touch well before then. So thanks so much for coming on, brother.
Oh man, hey, appreciate you having me. Shout out to the fellas on the SmackDown review too. I'm on the football function on Patreon, so I wanted to give them a little love while I was on here. But yeah, man, excited to be a part of the group now. Appreciate you having me on, and yeah, looking forward to maybe the future of you and I getting together again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, buddy. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.